morning and welcome to Market Insights. I am Lovina Emma and it's a beautiful Thursday morning. The weather is sunny and bright this morning. So today's show, we're going to be discussing transportation. Now, transportation is the lifeblood of our economy. It connects businesses to consumers, workers to jobs, and suppliers to manufacturers. But transportation policies can have a significant impact on how efficiently and effectively these connections are made. You know, well-designed transportation policies can boost economic growth in several ways, and investments in infrastructures like roads, bridges can also reduce congestion and improve travel times, leading to increased productivity, and this will also lead to efficiency in our businesses. But on the flip side, a poorly planned transportation policy can hinder economic activity. For example, excessive regulations on trucking or ride-sharing services can reduce or rather restrict competition and drive up the prices, increase the prices for consumers and businesses. But that being said, on today's show, my guest and I will discuss how to find a balance between good transportation policies that will promote economic growth and also address other concerns such as environmental stability, social equity. In addition, investing in alternative modes of transportation such as cycling, and we already have walking in Nigeria. But, you know, we need to actually reduce our traffic congestion on the roads. These things have been causing air pollution for quite some time. So my guest and I will discuss these issues and so much more. My guest this morning is Mr. Yahaya Mohammed. He is a strategy and operations specialist with extensive experience in management consulting and providing technical advisory to high-profile clients in various industries, including the federal government of Nigeria. He currently serves as the country manager for Bolt, being responsible for the ride-hailing services operations in Nigeria. So welcome to the program this morning, Mr. Yahaya Mohammed.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm glad you're here this morning as we can discuss transportation in Nigeria and how it's affecting businesses and also individuals. Now, but before we get right into that now, transportation, how can transportation investments lead, or how can transportation infrastructure lead to best investment growth in the country?
Transportation infrastructure will be essential for driving development in the country. As we've seen, the presidency, they're going towards CNG practices and moving a bit from petrol, which has proven to be a bit more expensive in these past few months. What we are envisioning, especially at Bolt, is to collaborate with government partners to see how we can also include our own fleets into this solution, building the right infrastructure to support these initiatives, such as CNG and even to a larger extent electrification, can really help to save costs and help to develop the economy.
Okay. Well, we know we have different transportation policies in Nigeria that have impacted our productivity and distribution of businesses and also how people can work in this country. Now, we know in recent times, apart from this, we'll still talk about the transportation policies, but we know a city like Lagos, for example, now, we've been seeing traffic all over the states. Everybody complains about it. And recently, a lot of people have been saying there are more vehicles on the roads. Now, I know you're the head of a ride-sharing app that works online for people. Now, how can we ensure that this transportation system can work effectively for everybody so that Nigerians don't have to, to be more emphatic, Lagosians don't have to bring their cars to the streets? They know there's an effective ride-sharing app, there's an effective, a working commercial transportation system, so we don't have to put our cars on the roads.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to begin with, at Bolt, we're primarily a company that is focused on building a better city for people, not cars. So by this, what we actually aim to doing is actually improving the number of transportation means of transportation that people would have in the city. So for example, when you go to our European cities, you find micromobility devices such as scooters, bikes, and other means apart from cars that people can actually use to move. With a city like Lagos, with our waterways, it's certainly an avenue that we can explore to help really diversify transportation and help reduce traffic congestion. So it's something that we're really up for improving and trying to make our supply services adequate to feed demand.
Yes, I know there's a high demand for these types of services here, not just with your own ride-sharing app, other ride-sharing apps in all over Nigeria, not just in Lagos alone. But we know there are certain issues with transportation. For example, bad roads. That's one issue. And with the rainy season now, I'm sure we've seen pictures all over the internet of flooding, roads that have been flooded, people complaining about not reaching their destination or missing appointments because of the weather conditions. And we know, according to the National Meteorological Agency, they have predicted more rains to come in the weeks ahead. So now, with this condition of bad roads, now how can we effectively manage our transportation system right now in our country, Nigeria?
Yeah, so like I previously mentioned, in somewhere like Lagos, exploring the waterways is definitely an avenue in which we're putting less burden on the roads. Obviously, also improving the infrastructure, the road infrastructure, in terms of investments, maintenance, and helping to reduce instances of flooding. Also, we have a light rail system in Lagos, so I believe developing more systems that would take cars off the road would help in maintaining the roads that we have much better.
Okay, now how can we create an efficient transportation system that can help the country move forward economically and also increase competitiveness?
I think key to creating an efficient system would be ultimately a collaboration between private partners and government. The government, despite everything, they are unable to simply execute such a momentous task alone. So it would definitely take the collaboration of us within ride-sharing platforms and also effective government policies in terms of enabling these ride-sharing services to help take the burden off private drivers.
Okay, okay. Well, I also thinking, yes, I know we have the road system, the rail system, both are in used efficiently here in Lagos, but in other states of our country, we don't see rail transportation used that often. It's just mostly people moving on the roads. Then, yes, there's the air transportation too, but with not just Lagos alone, with a focus to other states in Nigeria. Now, how do we successfully map out all these key areas? You know, there's a structure in this country now. People say, okay, yes, where you go to work, there where you worship on Sundays, then maybe on Saturdays where you go for your relaxation. So how can we, using that people's movement pattern, how can we effectively map out the transportation system?
Okay, so one thing we've focused on this year at Bolt is improving our secondary products. And by secondary products, I mean we're investing more in tricycles and also your Okadas, your two-wheelers. So in certain states, we know that these are effective means of transportation. We've looked at also partnering with various companies in terms of how we can also electrify these modes of transport, which would therefore bring down the daily costs of both the riders and the drivers at a much lower cost than people fueling with petrol. So I believe ultimately we'll diversify and focus on these low cost products that would help bring value to people, but also help you driving around or everybody trying to get a car and be on the road at the same time.
Okay, what I really mean is, like, for example, if Monday to Friday
Yes.
you work in, maybe you, let me use this city as an example. Maybe you live at Yaba, and
Yes.
Monday to Friday you work at Victoria Island, and that's where, so you're moving from your house at Yaba to your office at Victoria Island, and that's a to and from Monday to Friday. Then on Saturday, maybe you decide, oh, today's Saturday, let me go to the beach, which is, you also have to come to the island again.
Yeah.
And then on Sunday, you say, oh, it's a Sunday, let me go to my church, which is maybe it's somewhere in Lagos Island. So that means you have the your transportation routes. For example, that person I'm giving an example of doesn't have a car, is from mainland Yaba to the island, Victoria Island, Monday to Friday. So now how do we successfully create a system whereby people don't need to, for example, during the rainy season, come out, oh my goodness, it's raining, there are no vehicles, there's no buses. I've been trying to hitch a ride, get a ride on my app, and it's not connecting, network issues. That's aside, but you keep seeing the issue of, oh, all our cars are busy right now. On It's not just on your own app, or even other ride sharing apps. You see those issues too. And then, so how do we successively manage this to make sure that, okay, whether it's a sunny weather or a rainy weather, people can conveniently move about without knowing the difference. There's an easy way for them to move about, because the transporters, these commercial transporters, know that Monday to Friday, these are the routes of most people in this city. Let me use Lagos as an example. So how do we just ensure that there are no hitches for people to conduct their businesses and go about doing the things that they want to do without experiencing any difficulties?
Yeah, so your question is noted. Mainly on our part, obviously every stakeholder is doing their part to help provide this adequate supply. It's mainly just to have that adequate supply of drivers, and that's mainly trying to get in many more cars onto the platform, and have drivers also drive during the on-peak hours, whereby we know demand is highest. The way we would effectively do this is by dedicating a portion of our commission to providing incentives to drivers to also help manage the demand at those certain points in time, whereby we know that traffic is highest and rider demand would be highest. So trying to just meet that demand with the right supply.
Okay, so can you tell us about some challenges that have hindered our transportation system in Nigeria?
A key part would obviously be FX, and by this we know that it's harder to get in cars into the country simply because it's far more expensive. A car that you typically purchase at 1 to 2 million naira at earlier parts of last 2 years now costs 4 to 5 million naira. On our part, what this means is that less drivers are able to afford cars, and even the cars that you have right now, they're limited and more prone to breakdown. So, and what we also know is that operational costs are more expensive because a lot of the car parts are imported into the country. So what we then have is a more expensive system to maintain, and it then becomes also a system that is harder to grow. So over the past few years, we know that demand for ride-hailing has grown. However, the supply to then meet this demand has not been growing simultaneously, which then leads to problems of demand exceeding supply.
Yes, that's true. We don't want that to happen. Okay, yes, but yes, you mentioned the cost of importing cars into the country. Wouldn't it be better if most of companies like yours and other companies patronize made in Nigeria vehicles?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we've definitely explored, but what we've also noticed that many costs have risen with FX. So a lot of their cars are also tied to the cost of FX. Therefore, with the rise of FX, we've also seen the rise of the cost of local manufactured cars, because at the end of the day, not all the parts are not made end to end in Nigeria, and therefore the importation of these car parts have seen it become more expensive. But it's partnerships that we're consistently open to developing, and we're also consistently looking for partners that can come in at the right price.
Okay, partners that can come in at the right price. Okay,
Yes.
could you expatiate further on that? Because yes, I know the government has initiated its willingness to partner with businesses, transportation companies, the introduction of CNG, so that it's an option, not just the fuel mix alone. So could you go expatiate further?
Yeah, so at the right price, ultimately, whenever you book a ride on the platform, it costs a certain amount of money. And we know that the cost of these vehicles are also tied to the cost of petrol, and drivers would need to make a profit. So ultimately, at the right price would be an affordable vehicle that would be easier for the driver to maintain and also make enough from to actually sustain themselves.
Okay. Okay, yes, I know that, yes, I mentioned the government's initiative of CNG is one, and also know that with issues with insecurity, that's another challenge also. Now, there have been regulations on ride-sharing app as a source of transportation all over Nigeria now. So how have these services affected the businesses and also increased the prices, both for individuals and businesses, people who patronize your app, and also you as a business owner? How has it been so far with the government regulations?
The government regulation in terms of helping with CNG or with the
both with
petrol?
CNG and also in trying to put some rules and regulations to guide business owners of ride-sharing apps. That's what I mean.
Yeah. So in our
We can
part,
start with CNG first, then we can
okay,
talk about how the government
okay.
has put regulations to guide people who own these ride-sharing apps.
Okay, so in terms of CNG, it's something that we're definitely looking to explore with our fleet owners that own 50, 100 cars on the platform. We're looking to see how we can get a section of them to convert to CNG so that there'll be better cost earnings, there'll be better driver earnings for the fleet owners and also the drivers, and at the same time, we'll be able to reduce prices for the riders. In terms of government regulations, it's something that we have been proactive about, and particularly around safety. Last year, we implemented driver selfie verification, and what this means is essentially any driver that's on a platform periodically takes selfies to verify that they are who they are and that it's the right person driving the right car on the platform. This year, we're focusing on also verifying our riders to ensure that both parties, both the riders and the drivers, all on the platform, are both who they claim to be. And we would have an API integration with NIMSI to also verify this data backend to ensure that we all have legitimate stakeholders on the platform.
How can we ensure that a good transportation system solves employment in Nigeria? As you know, with commercial transportation, we have the buses, we have cars, we also have the trains too that move on. Those are for land transportation. Then for the water transportation system, the ferries. Yes, Lagos State government has that in the works right now. We have ferries moving people from places like Ikorodu to Ikoyi. But yes, I believe that we need to still tap into these issues more and also create more employment for people. So how can an effective transportation system solve unemployment in Nigeria?
It can definitely be helped and improved via increased investment. So these waterways, these ferries, these are players that we can easily collaborate with if the supply is available. Our app allows it so that we can integrate with multiple facets of transportation. So if we did have an increase of these players that had boats, ferries, and were willing to transport passengers, it's something that we can definitely help to drive that demand and help to amplify these services, which would ultimately take more burden off the roads.
Okay. Okay, now to these challenges, now what would you suggest as solutions to these challenges? For example, if you were part of this current government with the Ministry of Transportation, what solutions would you give to our current transportation issues?
So it would be alongside what we've mentioned. So it would start with ultimately CNG and also trying to see how we can encourage electrification in the country, building more centers and encouraging the building of EVs by our domestic manufacturers. It would also be improving these waterways investments, encouraging people by the relevant tax and levies and tax holidays in terms of improving that investment and then making it clear to foreign investors that these are businesses that the government is supporting.
Okay, now can we discuss further on the economic benefits of new technologies like the electric vehicles and the autonomous vehicles that will also, and also the vehicles that will also be created for the mix of CNG and fuel. Those, yes, there are buses and also the three-wheeler vehicles, the tricycles that will be coming out soon that will be running on CNG. But can we talk about the economic benefits of this, how it will benefit our economy?
Yeah, the economic benefits would ultimately be massive because a lot of businesses are ultimately driven in one way by another by transportation. It's either the transport of the employees or transport of the actual goods, products, services via these different modes of transport. So ultimately reducing these costs and making it much cheaper to the public would have that beneficial effect ultimately on businesses. And then what we can then see is that businesses are able to then charge better prices. We can have cheaper prices. Definitely on our platform, we'll be able to offer better prices for riders, and the drivers will still be able to earn more.
Okay. Okay. Yes, they will be definitely earn more. Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. I know we're looking at how people can make money. Yes, everybody wants to make more money. It's needed. So, okay, now we know in different parts of the world, like you mentioned, yes, in Nigeria, We have buses, we have cars, we have trains, we also have the ferries, but things like cycling, it's not, you said you're going to introduce that soon, but it's not something that is too common in this country. So how can a successful, how do we introduce these things that can, these bicycles, for example, that can move successfully and also be in the transportation mix with other vehicles that we have, starting with road transportation?
Okay, I mean, first of all, we're not we're not looking to introduce it anytime really soon,
Okay.
but I mean, it is in the plans. It is ultimately in the long-term plans to help build these, to help introduce these more sustainable modes of transport. And a key part of enabling them to work is having the right policies and also the right dedicated routes and areas to actually enable them. In a lot of countries that you see people cycling to work, you end up having like cycling lanes whereby people are actually able to cycle without interacting with vehicles. So to really be a collaboration between government and private partners to actually identify these routes and maybe certain areas. So for example, if you wanted to go, if you're in VI and you wanted to go to somewhere within VI, ultimately you shouldn't be always trying to get a car because they're just adding to the traffic congestion. It could easily be something where you're taking a scooter or a bicycle and then you're just really taking a 10-minute journey without impacting the road traffic.
Okay, okay, and yes, like you said, the government needs to really come into this sector to create things like a cycling lane, make sure people are not to reduce accidents happening because people are using bicycles. And yes, we already have the tricycles moving on the roads, but it's not too many people want to use them because of
Same.
accidents. And yes, safety is a very important issue. Now, safety in transportation. Now, yes, with cars, they already have these features. There's the airbags, there are the doors that protect the passengers in the cars. But on our waterways, we've heard of incidents, not just in Lagos, across the country, of small boats capsizing and people losing their lives. So now, how do we focus more on this safety in transportation? I know, yes, education is needed for the people who operate these services, but apart from education and enlightening them, what more can you add to this?
It would ultimately, again, it would have to be a partnership between businesses and the government to help perhaps develop right policies that can be to help enforcement and regulation of the boats that are on our waterways and also the conditions in which customers would actually get on these boats. So to enforce that everybody wears a life jacket, enforce a minimum, or sorry, maximum number of people on these boats at any given point in time, and just really making sure that everybody's aware that these are safety procedures towards preventing death as opposed to trying to restrict business, and really making sure that this is entrenched in both the minds of the operators and also the customers of the service.
Okay, okay. But we know Lagos is an urban center, so we've seen all these things being implemented. But in other states of our country, it's not something that is too, we don't see it that often. So what steps would you take to ensure that people get the right kind of information for safety on our water transportation system? And yes, mostly our water safety there, yes.
Yeah, so I think a huge part could also be the media, like yourselves, really coming in to really preach and make it known that these are really safety procedures to help people and not really restrict businesses, and really also put guidances out in terms of procedures and steps to take in terms of how the vehicles would operate. And private businesses could also see this as an opportunity into spaces that they could venture in terms of education and public enlightenment around these procedures.
Okay. Okay, now, okay, apart from that, let's also, yes, well said too. How can we measure the true economic impact of transportation policies, considering both the short-term and long-term consequences?
So ultimately, measuring such indices would be you identifying key KPIs that you would like to solve. So, for example, if we're going to this journey trying to support, trying to prevent accidents on the road, this would just easily be a KPI that we can identify. Let's reduce the number of accidents that happen. If we're trying to reduce the number of deaths, that could also be an incident. If we're trying to reduce traffic time and ETAs, there are various indices rather, that you can always use to apply the success, to measure the success of a project. So it will all depend on the priority in terms of what we're trying to achieve while embarking on this journey.
Okay, so like you mentioned, yes, if we're trying to reduce, for example, air pollution, that's one. If we're
Exactly.
trying to also reduce, that's affecting the environment. If we're trying to reduce the noise pollution, I'm sure you've noticed them cars always horning all the time on our roads. It can be quite upsetting when you keep hearing it consistently, especially in Lagos. And that's another thing: air pollution, noise pollution, the reducing accidents on our roads. Yes, the government has put there's a speed limit on Third Mainland Bridge, but Nigerians have not been obeying these things, and that's another issue to look at. And then the traffic time, people have attributed it. Some people say, oh, there are too many vehicles on roads that are not too wide to take all of them. So how can we successfully ensure that, okay, our commercial transportation system functions so well that things like accidents on the roads is eliminated because there are fewer vehicles, the noise pollution, the air pollution, cars that are not functioning properly should not be on the roads. How do we ensure that all these things are effectively obeyed, all these regulations, the speed limits also are effectively obeyed on our roads?
Yeah. So ultimately,
Just using it as the key KPIs for us, since you mentioned that.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, it would be obviously you can always mention the government. Government should do this, that, but then also as private individuals, businesses, we also have a responsibility to our communities, and we can definitely also come in, not particularly us as both, but then it's a space for other entities to actually come in and help with innovative solutions and towards how we can then maintain these regulations. So, for example, you talked around the Third Mainland Bridge and various traffic restrictions, speed restrictions that people do not obey. Then how do we get people to obey these rules? What do they do in other countries? What are benchmarks that we can use? So these are all areas that anyone can actually offer these innovative solutions. Would it be traffic cameras? Would it be guidances for people that actually mean well and trying to adhere? So, for example, I could tell you that I'm easily on the Third Mainland Bridge, and I can't really recall where the specific speed regulation is, right? What's the actual speed limit? I might know this just by knowledge of being the transport sector, but maybe the average person doesn't see this enough. So it could just be increased signages, more guidance for people, apps to also help curtail this behavior and help reporting to the various authorities.
Okay, and also, I also mentioned the current air pollution
Air
from
pollution, yes.
exhaust pipes of vehicles. I mean, yes, we not just with cars, with trucks, with the heavy
Yes,
vehicles too. That's
absolutely.
and these vehicles that move interstate carrying goods, they're also guilty of these things. We have them causing accidents. The ones that carry containers also causing accidents. The ones that have a lot of smoke coming out of the exhaust pipes too. Those are also issues that have affected us in this country. So people don't want to be at the how do I put it now? People don't want to be at underneath these vehicles. They just say,
Yeah.
okay, let me get my own car. My car has an air conditioner and I can wind up the windows. I don't have to breathe in the very offensive smell coming from the exhaust pipe. So that's another issue to look at. And then the fact that we have to spend so much time on the roads moving from one point to the other. It could even be a short distance. Maybe you're moving from Ikoyi to Victoria Island, and then you're spending almost an hour on the road, and then you're wondering why is this happening. So yeah, so those are also those kind of issues too. So how do we effectively put those indicators there that okay, we want to solve all these issues. So what steps do we take to solving these issues?
So a huge part of it would be diversifying the modes of transport that would be available to each of the riders in terms of getting to your various locations. And then it would also be, especially like you talked around car quality. A huge part of car quality and why we would have perhaps substandard cars on the road would possibly deal with the right inspections. And also because of the quality of the roads, it becomes a cycle But what could ultimately be done could be to perhaps increase the level of inspection of these vehicles, perhaps increase the level of regularity with which they are inspected to ensure that they meet the minimum required standards to be on the road, and to also ensure that the right people are actually behind these vehicles. When you have massive trucks, you actually need specialized licenses to actually operate these vehicles, because they could be very dangerous ultimately to everybody else on the road. We've seen many instances of containers tipping off and it leading to lots of traffic and congestion. So it would be around really redefining these processes, and then also increasing the number of choices that we have for the various customers in terms of moving around the city.
Okay, that's very true. Yes. Okay, now let's talk about not just in this city, across Nigeria, other states. Now, how can cities in Nigeria mitigate the economic impacts of transportation policies on low-income earners and in marginalized communities? How do they solve this?
Yeah, so that's a huge part of what we're trying to solve in terms of what I mentioned earlier around our secondary products and introducing these electric kekes, electric bicycles, okadas, to really try and ultimately offer subsidized services, right? Because if you're spending 5,000 naira to ultimately fill up your, so obviously the bikes will use batteries, not tanks. So perhaps ultimately a keke might use maybe 10,000 naira to fill up your tank. And if it's maybe charging, then you're spending considerably less, maybe I think 4 or 5,000, way less, I think, but depending on the
Well, if
policy.
it's run by electricity, I don't think they have to be, maybe there are electric centers designated for
Exactly,
them to
exactly. So ultimately, how it would work and how we're trying to plan the implementation would be to have battery swapping centers to ensure that you're not really taking time to actually charge these batteries, but rather you just swap them out and you don't have any interruption to your services. So ultimately, I think it would be dependent on really focusing on these low-cost products where possible, and also looking at other means. So there's a Bajaj Qute. I don't know whether you've heard of it. It's a small four-wheeler vehicle that is less petrol. It consumes less petrol, basically, than the average car. So using these type of smaller vehicles that consume less petrol could ultimately be an option for people, especially in cities that don't have a greater, as a great purchasing power as Lagos.
Okay. That's a very good innovation. Is it just something that is going to be newly introduced, or you've started it, or it's something that is still in the works?
It's more or less in the works, but in certain cities, for example, Uyo, Jos, we already offer the secondary products. Kekes, you can easily ride a keke, book your keke on Bolt. But then trying to also include these EV aspects, it's something that's definitely in the works, whereby we're trying to get more supply of this and make this more available in these cities.
Okay, that's a very good innovation. It will help a lot of people. I believe it's not just carrying goods; it can move people from one point to the other. That is
Absolutely.
a very good innovation. Okay, now yes. So now, what are the economic benefits of investing non-motorized transportation infrastructure, such as bike lanes and pedestrian-friendly streets? As you know, things like for pedestrians. We have walkways in this part of Nigeria, but when you leave this city, you don't see that often. Having a bike, well, yes, we talked about that, but having more pedestrian lanes for people that want to take long walks. What's are the benefits?
Yeah, so the benefit is ultimately you could also there are two aspects to it. You would be ultimately helping the environment. You'd be helping people. People would actually have an option to walk many distances and be able to not use their cars all the time. But then also creating bike lanes and also encouraging that this space is now available for entrepreneurs to come in. You could also see people come in then with more employment opportunities in terms of providing bike rental services, scooters, also other means of transport that people have not been able to really access because the right routes aren't there. So there are really many opportunities to the economy in terms of improving these options.
Okay, that's very good. So let's just talk briefly on businesses now. There's a growth of e-businesses online. People have their shops online, different things that you can do on the internet. Now, how can transportation policies support the growth of e-commerce and the last mile delivery? Yes, we know that these e-commerce services excuse me, these e-commerce services, we know that they run on, okay, you see a product you like on the internet, you call the buyer on phone, and then they arrange, okay, this is the price, then you pay for it, and then there is a delivery person taking it there to you. But how can we ensure that there's a smooth flow between the consumer, or the person buying the good, and also the delivery agent also? Yes, I know Bolt offers the services, but all over the country is something that there's a gap which needs to be bridged. So how do we solve this?
Yeah, so yes, you're right. It's something that we do offer. Unfortunately, not in all cities in Nigeria at the moment, but hopefully it's something that we're looking to expand to. What we are ultimately seeing in this sector is that growing demand for delivery services, and we're trying to bring the technology aspect into this. So what we've been doing is we're in discussion with many wholesale and retail marketplaces in terms of how can we actually help to solve this problem, and that's by ultimately pairing our delivery couriers with these platforms and just making sure that process is more seamless. So for example, you might go on to any e-commerce website and you make your delivery, and instead of waiting 4 or 5 days, if they're in your country, if they're in your city, if they have that product available in your city, why wait the extra 4 or 5 days? You could easily just have a courier come in from the platform amongst our thousands available, and they can have this delivered seamlessly all through an integrated platform. So what we're trying to do is really integrate this process, make sure it's more seamless, and have these couriers come on board and really offer this service.
Okay, okay. And recently in the news, a popular shipping company was talking about the cost of fuel, how it's affecting delivering their services from one country to the other. So they put out a note to their consumers that they're going to be increasing the prices of their services because of the increase in the price of fuel. Now, I know it's not just shipping companies that have been affected, even those on land too have been affected by the price of fuel. And the Jet A1 too, people who move by air are also affected by the price of Jet A1. There's an increase in the price of this. Now, how, yes, we know fuel particularly is something that is very important in our transportation sector, because in Nigeria, all our vehicles move with fuel and diesel. Now, how can fuel, yes, we know there's CNG as an option. It's work in progress. It will soon come in. But how, so far, what we're currently using, fuel and diesel now, how can we successfully manage this to ensure that our transportation system runs smoothly and effectively, and we don't have to be seeing, oh, the price of fuel went up and now we have to increase the price of transportation costs?
Yeah, so ultimately it will be twofold. There's the government aspect in terms of enabling players like Dangote to come in and produce these products locally, so that we can actually have it at a local available price that's not subject to FX. And second one would also be to increase the appetite of entrepreneurs and also potentially foreign investors to also create more products of this, like whereby petrol, fuel, the PMS is produced locally, jet fuel and diesel as well. So just encouraging these players to actually come into the sector and be able to invest the right amount of money to actually meet local demand, and to an extent also exceed that local demand and be able to have a product that we can export that would ultimately improve our trade balance.
Okay, well, I'm still on freight services. Now, how can we balance the need for efficient freight transportation with the concerns of local communities impacted by traffic congestion and pollution? So this is more on for this city, for Lagos. Now, we know, yes, there is traffic congestion, having to move your goods from one point to the other. But with the freight transportation, yes, if you're shipping your goods from outside Nigeria, you get to the Apapa port, then you have to clear it there, and then you still still have to move that item. If it's something very big, you have to use the container to move it from the port to where your warehouse is located. So how can we balance the need for this efficient and effective freight transportation with the concerns of local communities that have been impacted by traffic congestion?
Yeah, so I think a huge part of balancing it, like you would in many businesses, when you have an exceeding amount of demand, ultimately you also have to look at supply. Right now, I think along our coastline, we don't have too many ports, right? I think there's Apapa and there's also one in Calabar, but ultimately there aren't too many ports whereby people can actually clear their goods. So one aspect would be, yes, we can make Apapa more efficient, but we can also try and establish more ports in other cities alongside our coast, which could help them reduce the stress that is being put on our current ports, and just making sure that all these ports are at maximum efficiency, and the roads and the roads leading to these ports are actually well developed enough to cater to that demand. So ultimately, increasing that supply and making it more readily available will be a huge part to, ultimately improving this service.
Okay, that's very true. It's definitely play a huge part. And yes, we know we talked about the road conditions, how yes, bad roads are there, but yes, there's something in the works. The government is working on clearing drainages to ensure that the roads are functioning much better for everybody using them. Okay, now that being said, now with our economy, now we know if we can efficiently manage our transportation system, we can move businesses are done seamlessly. Nobody needs to be worried about having any major challenges now. But how can we ensure that all this is properly maintained? Yes, with the cars, the option of CNG is there, but that maintenance culture is needed, because if we just put up all this wonderful infrastructure and maybe in the 2-3 years going down, everything is back to square one. So how can we ensure that we effectively manage everything?
Yeah, so effective maintenance would ultimately be a collaboration with us users and also the providers, operators, and also the government. So it would have to be an all-round collaboration whereby everybody really understands their responsibility. If you have a vehicle being operated on CNG, you have to be really well educated that you just don't go anywhere to fill up this tank. You have to really use certified providers and make sure that you go for regular checkups. That would really help in terms of delivering this service and making sure that it is maintained to the right quality. And then also through government, you can then provide the relevant inspections and also the relevant certifications to show that these vehicles are inspected regularly, and then the centers that these services are provided are actually certified, and they're really providing top quality goods that would help maintenance. Ultimately, when people then see these benefits and you see a really well operating system, and people are more likely to not only buy in but also comply to the existing regulations to ensure that these standards are kept.
Okay, that was well said. Okay, yes. So an effective partnership with the government, public-private partnership, more education is needed to enlighten people on the benefits of this, and also to carry everybody on board, not just the government, stakeholders in the industry, but also the consumers. You know, consumers have the overall, I would say they have the overall rights. They have all the power in this whole scenario, because if you look at it, if the consumers don't patronize these transportation companies, they won't be able to make their money. If the consumers don't, if they don't actually see if they don't get money for their value, what they're paying for, if they don't get the right kind of value for it, they won't want to continue with the patronage. And then we're back to, put your cars on the road, more vehicles on the road. So yes, well said, Mr. Yahaya. Yes, you said everything very well. Okay, so your final thoughts on this, just before we round off the program.
Yeah, so I think moving towards sustainable means of transport is extremely important for the economy. It will definitely help to boost it. And we're also really trying to see a way to make these services more affordable, and that's by diversifying them, offering better alternatives in terms of petrol, CNG, EV. Would really help to boost earnings of various drivers across all platforms, and can also definitely help make these services more affordable for riders all around.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Yahaya Mohammed. It was great having you on the program as we discuss the impacts of transportation policies in Nigeria. And a more efficient transportation policy will definitely guide how we do things in this country and also help our businesses. Yes, what we have so far is good, but it can be better, and it will create more efficiency in how we conduct ourselves in this country and how we can efficiently have a growing economy, but how things can become much better in the country. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So, transportation policy is a complex issue. It has far-reaching economic consequences, but by carefully considering the potential impacts of different policies, we can create a transportation system that supports a strong and sustainable economy. So I want to thank my guest, Mr. Yahaya Mohammed, for joining us this morning. And do come again to our program, Market Insights. So that's our time this morning as we discuss these issues. Many thanks for watching. I am your host, Lovina Emma.